whoever you are, wherever you are, hope you are blessed and doing safe. Ladies and gentlemen, greetings, family. Of course, I'm tuning in. You see me without the glasses off today, but if you're looking for some opportunities, particular advertisement opportunities, then look no further at the link at the bottom to my email address. You can hit me up for advertisement opportunities. We are supporting and promoting your businesses here on this channel. You can also, if you would like to donate and subscribe to our Patreon, a link is at the bottom as well. So you have multiple ways in which you can advertise with the platform by emailing me when we go on through our live stream. You also have access to premium content, those that want to see premium content that you will not find here on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, as I am suspended probably by now. You guys can check out the Patreon at link at the bottom. But advertisement opportunities, definitely email me, gavin.grich1@gmail.com for rates. And for the Patreon, it is the same as the YouTube channel. It is channel gboot2786. All right, I'll holla. Peace.
I'm attorney Gavin Richard. I grew up here in New Orleans, so I know how important family, friends, and community are to us. And helping others has been a lifelong passion of mine. If you've been injured in an accident, you may be out of work and faced with large medical bills. You'll need someone to fight the insurance companies so that you can get on with your life. Give me a call at 504-799-2288, and I'll be with you all the way. The law offices of Gavin M. Richard, going the distance so that justice may be served. Hi, I'm attorney Gavin M. Richard. Check out my latest book, The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania versus William H. Cosby Jr., The Destruction of Due Process in America. For approximately 2 years now, I have gone on a painstaking quest to investigate the rise and fall of an American icon, Bill Cosby. In the mid-1980s, there was not a star that was higher than Cosby. Advertisements with Coca-Cola, Jell-O, Kodak, along with the #1 television show for 5 straight years in a row. On Thursday nights, it was must-see TV on NBC. Cosby resurrected the genre of the traditional family sitcom that was once thought dead by television critics. He did this as a Black American with an all-Black cast and showed mainstream network executives in white America that it was possible to be successful without showing the worst in people. He also demonstrated the power that television had, as it can make younger people dream to be the best that they can be. However, like many celebrity stars, unfortunately, they all come crashing down, sometimes by their own fault, others not so much. In this book, I attempted to highlight certain things. We go in depth into both his trials in 2017 and 2018, respectively. What if I told you that these criminal trials were politically motivated by an overzealous district attorney? Will you also be shocked to learn the attacks on Mr. Cosby did not start in 2014, but also in the 90s, not long after his attempted quest to purchase a major network? From where did all of these allegations of sexual misconduct come from? Were the accusers telling the truth? In the 2 years of research, with some help from others interested in learning the truth and facts about this case, we discussed both the legal reasons why his prosecution and trial were illegal, unwarranted, and also the possible personal motives as to why this may have occurred. Most importantly, we warn about the dangers of prejudice and why trial by social media, or mainstream media rather, should never be the norm. All this and more in The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania versus William H. Cosby Jr., The Destruction of Due Process in America. Available on Amazon this fall in Kindle and paperback format.
Look at that face. That awful, ugly face. We knew this day. I knew that this was going to be coming, ladies and gentlemen. The jury reached a verdict. Breaking news. They found all three of the defendants, William Rodney Bryan, Travis McMichael, and Greg McMichael, guilty of murder in the case of Ahmaud Arbery. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special edition of Gavin Richard Presents here on channel G-Boo 786. I am live in Houston. Whoever you are, wherever you are, I hope you are blessed and doing safe on this Thanksgiving Eve. Ladies and gentlemen, as you just saw, and I pointed out, I will play that video, but that was William Rodney Bryan's face prior to the jury verdict being rendered in this matter of the death of Ahmaud Arbery, the murder of Ahmaud Arbery. And I got to share with you all. I'm going to, of course, play the verdict for you all in a second. I'm also going to bring in someone in a minute who's been a guest of ours. Well, I've been a guest, I believe, of ours before. He is, I think this is the first time coming on the show, but he's no stranger to me. And he is from Atlanta, Georgia, and he is a fellow attorney who originally brought this to my attention and to the attention of a lot of people. I'm going to bring in brother Brian Ponder. Brian, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. How are you, Gab?
I'm doing fine, my brother. Happy early Thanksgiving. It is a good thing. It's, unfortunately, it's under bad circumstances, but at least some justice was brought here today in the case of Ahmaud.
Absolutely.
Arbery. And I want to play for everybody first, before I play the verdict, I want to play a clip because, Brian, I give credit to you, especially because you brought this to my attention and to a lot of people. I didn't even know that this had happened back in February of last year because, and I'm going to talk about this, and I've mentioned before, the district attorneys of Brunswick County, respectively, this Jackie Johnson, as well as this George Barnhill, they actually stood in the way of the Arbery family from receiving justice. Now, I'm going to go ahead and play that video for everybody right now. Now, this is Brian out in the front.
On the behalf of African-American males and people of color who are profiled for no reason, going through a neighborhood, driving in their cars, who are looked at and based on the suspicion of whatever implicit bias that somebody has, they're looked at as a threat. That's why I'm here, to represent those individuals as my brother's keeper. It's not right what happened at all, and more needs to be said, more needs to be done immediately. And I'm not going to stand by and just not say anything and just be silent. It's Ahmaud Arbery today, but it could be any of us tomorrow.
The purpose of this really is awareness. We want to bring attention to what happened in Glenn County, specifically Brunswick, Georgia. Ahmaud Arbery was jogging, was killed by two vigilantes. Apparently, Travis McMichael pulled the trigger, and his dad, Gregory McMichael, put it all together. And so we want to bring attention to that case that went quiet for months. And today we're just going to walk around the Capitol, we're going to jog and walk in Ahmaud's spirit. And we want people to spread the word about what happened. We want to put the pressure on the police to make the arrest. We want to put the pressure on the DA to aggressively prosecute this case. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You have a confessed killing. You have a video, and that's the only thing left to do right now is to make the arrest, to follow through with the charges. You know, they had enough to make the arrest the day of when they heard the guy was killed. He was jogging. He had committed no crime. He was making no crime against them personally. So it's really unbelievable that they didn't make an arrest that day. It becomes believable when you understand the friendly relationship of this person with the department. He's a former police officer, former investigator for the DA. So it makes sense that they don't want to arrest their friend.
All right. Now, this is now what I'm playing next, ladies and gentlemen. That's what you saw, Brian. That this is the verdict here that was rendered.
Judge Timothy Walmsley dismissing the jury after roughly 11 hours of deliberating. The jury of 12 finding.
Okay, they didn't. This I wanted to play the part where they actually rendered the verdict. I'm actually looking for. Okay. This is it here, I believe. So let me. Hold on. Hold on 1 second, because y'all can't hear. Excuse me 1 second.
Felony murder.
Let me rewind it.
Travis McMichael, guilty.
Now that's I
Count
think that
two.
was
Felony murder.
Marcus.
We, the jury, find the defendant Travis
Arbery.
McMichael guilty.
Ahmaud
Count
Arbery.
3, felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant Travis McMichael guilty. Count 4, felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant Travis McMichael guilty. Count 5, felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant Travis McMichael guilty. Count 6, aggravated assault. We, the jury, find the defendant Travis McMichael guilty. Count 7, aggravated assault. We, the jury, find the defendant Travis McMichael guilty. Count 8, false imprisonment. We, the jury, find the defendant Travis McMichael guilty. Count 9, criminal attempt to commit a felony. We, the jury, find the defendant Travis McMichael guilty. Dated this 24th day of November, 2021.
17 months after being indicted by a grand jury, Travis McMichael found guilty on all counts. Let's turn to Gregory McMichael, the father of Travis McMichael. He was the one who had been chasing Arbery as well. He was standing in the bed of that pickup truck with a gun in his hand. Part of the chase.
I'm gonna play it again, finish, but guys, please put the copyright disclaimer in the comment box for me so we can put it up here. This is being shared for commentary purposes and news only.
Part of the killing. So in this case, Gregory McMichael has been found guilty on all of the charges except for malice murder. Our attorneys, we've had a couple of them weigh in here saying that they're not surprised this went down the way it did because Travis is the one who pulled the trigger. Gregory did not. All of the men are facing 30 years in prison at least. They must serve 30 years before becoming eligible for parole. The malice charge, not eligible for parole, according to our criminal defense attorney who just weighed in, Daryl Cohen. So let's listen in to the court on this one.
Count 1, malice murder. We, the jury, find the defendant Greg McMichael not guilty. Count 2, felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant Greg McMichael guilty.
This heifer.
Count 3, felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant Greg McMichael guilty. Count 4, felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant Greg McMichael guilty. Count 5, felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant Greg McMichael guilty. Count 7, aggravated assault. We, the jury, find the defendant Greg McMichael guilty. Count 8, false imprisonment. We, the jury, find the defendant Greg McMichael guilty. Count 9, criminal attempt to commit a felony. We, the jury, find the defendant Greg McMichael guilty.
Okay, so that's the McMichael's verdict. Now, here is William Roddy Bryan's, the reaction by Bryan. And then I'm going to get Brian Ponder to come in a second. But I want to get William Roddy Bryan's reaction when the verdict was read so everybody can see that since I just did the first two.
William R. Bryan. In the Superior Court of Glenn County, State of Georgia versus William R. Bryan, case number CR 2000433, jury verdict form. Count 1, malice murder. We, the jury, find the defendant William R. Bryan not guilty. Count 2, felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant William R. Bryan not guilty. Count 3, felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant William R. Bryan guilty. Count 4, felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant William R. Bryan guilty. Count 5, felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant William R. Bryan guilty. Count 6, aggravated assault. We, the jury, find the defendant William R. Bryan not guilty. Count 7, aggravated assault. We, the jury, find the defendant William R. Bryan guilty. Count 8, false imprisonment. We, the jury, find the defendant William R. Bryan guilty. Count 9, criminal attempt to commit a felony. We, the jury, find the defendant William R. Bryan guilty. Signed this 24th day of November by the foreperson. Go ahead and see.
All right. So that was when the verdict was read, and I'll play some more videos a little bit later. But Brian, first off, thank you for coming in, brother. And ladies and gentlemen, if you're in the Atlanta area, this is a brother who is killed in debt, foreclosures, bankruptcy. If you need to talk to anybody, this is Brian Ponder is the man. But and he practices in federal court. But most in particular, even though that is his particular area, what he has witnessed, he has been on the forefront in the struggle as of late, especially in this matter with Ahmaud Arbery. And Brian, first, before we talk about the case, let me just ask, how did you get involved when you saw this? Because you're in the Georgia area, but tell us how you got started since we saw you out there marching with everyone outside the courthouse.
Well, thanks for having me, Gavin. I got involved as soon as I found out about it. This happened in what I believe was February, but
yeah, February of last year.
Any word got out about this, right? But it wasn't until I think it was May that I found out about it. I mean, it was really kept sort of secret, and you know, with the pandemic and everything going on, you know, it just was swept under the rug. But the reason it was kept secret is because no one was prosecuting it. The case was just something that happened. And then once I found out about that, and you know, of course, looked into the facts of it, it really just looked like a lynching that was being literally swept under the rug. There were no arrests. I mean, it was just ridiculous. I actually went down there with Gerald Briggs and another group of people, and you know, Michael's truck was right there in the front yard. I mean, nothing was seized. It was the most horrific thing I've ever seen. You know, you have something using the crime that's just sitting out there, and they're inside probably watching TV. I mean, it was ridiculous. So I got involved as soon as I found out about it, and I organized that march around the Capitol building.
Right.
And I mean, it was a whole lot that went on real fast, you know, once I found out about it.
Yes, and once I found out about it, especially when we saw the video, because I think what happened was it happened in February, but it wasn't until I think, as you say, around April, it was roughly around April or May. This was during the pandemic when that video went viral. And what's interesting is that William Roddy Bryan went to an attorney because he had recorded this asking, what should I do? The attorney took it and released it. He leaked it. Whoever that attorney was, thinking he was doing a service to William Roddy Bryan, but in actuality, he incriminated him, which was interesting. But, you know, without that video, we would not be sitting here tonight talking about this case. And Ahmaud Arbery would likely not be getting the justice that he deserves. Now, of course, I see some people waiting in the on the sentencing. I see a few people have some questions about it, and I'll get to your questions a little bit shortly. But Brian, yeah, why? And I want to point this out too. You had a district attorney, and I actually wrote a letter to the governor. I also wrote Brian Kemp, because I think a lot of noise was created to get a special prosecutor out there. And I want to talk about that next, because the prosecutor of Brunswick County, as well as the sheriff, the prosecutor at that time, of course, being Jackie Johnson, who was facing charges for, I believe, malfeasance in office because she did not bring this case. You also had George Barnhill, who was the other prosecutor that kicked the bucket. We had, I'm just going to say it appears to be prosecutorial. I don't want to say the word prosecutorial misconduct, but certainly failure in office at best, at least, and prosecutorial misconduct at worst, as to why this case was not brought to trial. And you see here, and I don't like the Daily Beast because they're on some far left crap all the time, but they are right on this one. And they said all the lawyers who stood between Ahmaud Arbery and justice. Every murder saga has its share of moral, flexible defense lawyers or rogue prosecutors, but this crew stood out from the pack. And I don't want to put down lawyer. Of course, me being a criminal defense lawyer, I'm not here to put down criminal defense attorneys who represent their client. That's what they're supposed to do. Even the worst people in the world, if you're an American and you're charged with a crime, you are entitled to zealous representation. You're entitled to effective assistance of counsel. That is what our Constitution provides. But this trial was clearly racially motivated. But what were your thoughts on this Jackie Barnhill not bringing this Jackie Johnson, when she's being charged with, and why she didn't bring this to justice?
I mean, that certainly rises to a level of misconduct. I mean,
yeah,
Gregory and her pretty much conspired to cover up this whole thing.
You talking about Gregory McMichael?
Yeah, Gregory McMichael, the father, who was a former law enforcement person that worked at that in that Glenn County.
He was an investigator for the prosecutor, just so everybody knows, right?
Correct. So, I mean, right away, he was utilizing his connection, and she was certainly assisting him in avoiding his arrest. So this was just ridiculous. And when it was transferred to Barnhill, he didn't do anything, but Jackie sat on it, Barnhill sat on it. I mean, without the pressure of people all around, this case would not have proceeded. This literally would have never proceeded to any arrest. Better yet, trial and charge had the public, all the social justice warriors and people and protesters had not got involved. And it all started with Jackie. Absolutely.
Right. And I don't know if anybody can read that far from what I'm where I'm at, but you read here, last February, Johnson was the Brunswick DA in the midst of a re-election campaign when Gregory McMichael, this is what Brian and I are talking about, a former police officer and one-time investigator in her office, called her after his son shot Arbery to death in the street. Eventually, Johnson referred the case to Waycross District Attorney George E. Barnhill, recusing herself. But investigators now allege she meddled in the case before handing over the reins. On September 2nd, after losing her re-election bid, Johnson was indicted on several charges, including obstructing police after allegedly directing officers to not arrest the McMichaels after the incident. The indictment also states that Johnson showed favor and affection to Gregory McMichael and failed to treat Arbery's family fairly and with dignity when she recused herself from the investigation. Johnson has not yet entered a plea in her case, and her attorney could not be reached for comment. Now, that should tell you something, that they indicted her for that she's been indicted for this. And of course, they go into George Barnhill. Now, he was the Waycross District Attorney that the case was referred to. And he wrote a letter to the Glenn County Police Department. And Brian, I believe you shared this, and you even
pulled it up because I'm looking at it over here. This letter, I was like, let's get to Barnhill's letter, which will really upset you. He's pretty much mapping out the defense already for these guys versus his prosecutorial duty. But go ahead.
Yes, he's basically, this is a prosecutor, and you read this letter, it's 3 pages long, 3 pages long. He sounds like the damn defense attorney. He sounds like Sheffield and Kevin Goff.
Worse
than, I don't know if you can get worse than Goff.
Well, you can't get worse than Goff.
I mean, Goff was flat out talking racist shit in the courtroom.
And that other lady.
You talk that heifer, Laura Hogg. She's a hog, all right. Laura Hogg. We're gonna get to her in a minute because I want to know what your thoughts are on her closing argument and the remark she made about Ahmaud's toenails. But essentially, so let me hold that thought. But you guys read this. He wrote this to the Glenn County Police Department Chief captain, Tom Jump, back on. It's dated February. It's dated. I'm trying to see where the date is. They didn't date it. But
okay, yeah, it just says February 23rd death, but that letter is not dated that I can see.
We're going to say it was definitely clearly after April 2020, because he mentions the autopsy report from Arbery,
Sure.
on Ahmaud Arbery. And basically, as he reads this, he says here, now, as such, I believe it would be better for my office to step out, and I'm going to recuse myself in the assistants working for me from handling this case. I am contacting the Georgia Attorney General office and seeking their assistance in finding another district attorney in the state to handle the further evaluation prosecution in this case. That is, to determine whether there is sufficient evidence on which to make a grand jury presentation or not. Now, they didn't need a grand jury presentation because there was a dead body in the street. The police came. If a crime is committed in the presence of the police, or if they had probable cause, then, Brian, they didn't need the grand jury to do an indictment.
Not to make an arrest. To make an arrest, you don't need that.
No, not to make an arrest. Right. They could have made an arrest then. So this is not all on the DA's office. This is on the police department as well. They even, if you heard the court, if you listened in court, they even talked about how they covered up, allowed Travis McMichael, who was covered in Ahmaud Arbery's blood, to go home and take a shower and come back and do an interview like it was nothing. So you had the destruction of evidence. As you pointed out, that truck that was sitting there, that was evidence, because they tried to sideswipe Ahmaud Arbery.
Go to the second page where he's counting down all the reasons.
Right. These are all of the reasons. Let's look at this. First, I am the current elected DA for the Waycross Circuit. I worked as a prosecutor for some 36 years. As an ADA in Waycross in Brunswick, as chief assistant in Waycross for 20 years, and served as DA for the last 5 years. I have been actively involved in over 100 murder cases and assisted other prosecutors with at least 100 more. Well, then, if that's the case and you didn't bring charges for this, I think every case you handled should be looked at by the Supreme Court of Georgia. Because I don't think you know what the hell you were doing. He says, second, so he's touting off his record about how many schools, classes, and seminars he taught in criminal prosecution and criminal acts and evidence that he attended.
Attempting to give himself all the credibility in the world so you can believe and be placated by what he's about to say. But go ahead.
Yes. Now look at this, ladies and gentlemen. He says he reviewed the videotape with the photographs. I don't know what videotape he looked at, if he looked at the body camera footage, but he had the evidence. He knew that this man was killed. But so I'm going to assume he looked at the camera the infamous video footage that we all saw from William Roddy Bryan. He says the autopsy supports the initial opinion we gave you on February 24, 2020 at the briefing room in the Glenn County Police Department after reviewing the evidence you had at the time. We do not see grounds for an arrest of any of the three parties. Now, third, he mentions Brian William, Greg McMichael, and Travis McMichael were following in hot pursuit a burglary suspect with solid first-hand probable cause. They didn't have solid first-hand probable cause in their neighborhood, and telling him to stop. It appears their intent was to stop and hold this criminal suspect until law enforcement arrived. Under Georgia law, this is perfectly legal, referring to that infamous citizen's arrest statute. Now, Brian, because you're licensed in Georgia, if you could.
I'm licensed in New York. I reside in Georgia.
Oh, okay. I apologize. So he resides, he's licensed in New York, but he lives in Georgia. Excuse me. I had said earlier you were in Georgia. No, but he does federal practice, which here's a hint. You can be licensed in one state, but if you're barred in federal court in one state, you can waive in practice into another. So it's easy. But Brian does that work. But Brian, it says here, and you're familiar with this because I've seen you talk about it, a private person may arrest an offender if the offense is committed in his presence or within his immediate knowledge. If the offense is a felony and the offender is escaping or attempting to escape, a private person may arrest him upon reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion. Here's the only problem, Brian, as you know, they did not have firsthand knowledge of the incident, and the offense, at least in this case, would have been criminal trespassing, which is not a felony.
Right. And, looking at the trial, everyone saw that there was no crime committed in none of their presence. And you see this letter here shoehorning Roddy in, Brian William, and trying to make it a perfectly, the words is just really, reading this now, I felt the same way reading it then as I do now. It's just proven now how ridiculous this letter is. He had no, it's almost like he held a little trial in his head after looking at that video, giving them a perfectly legal defense of a citizen's arrest, and then forming an opinion, initial opinion, the next day in the briefing room after the autopsy, the next day of his death. How do you do all this in your head? It's just really ridiculous. Like I said earlier, this definitely is a big defense, almost brief. And as y'all heard in the trial, this whole citizen's arrest stuff didn't come up until the lawyers and everyone else, and it looks like even here, this district attorney came forward with that defense. As the trial showed, immediately after that, no one talked about trying to make a citizen's arrest of Ahmaud.
Yes. And so then he talks about the open carry law, which, yes, I'm familiar. If you're not a felon, if you're not prohibited by law to possess a handgun or a long gun, you can do so. Louisiana is an open carry state, so is Texas. They have that across the country. However, because it's an open carry state, that is not a license to kill. And it has to be made very clear. Brian, I have a concealed carry permit. I shoot guns all the time. Brian, I've seen video of you. You shoot guns as well. You know as well as I do, being a lawyer, that carrying a gun is great responsibility. And one of the first rules we learn in gun safety is what? Never point the gun unless you're ready to use it. Never pull it out if you're not ready to use it. Don't pull it out.
Right, and clearly, Travis, this is not just an open carry situation for the purpose of open carry. Travis armed himself with a gun, jumped out the truck with a gun, chased Ahmaud with a gun, clearly with the intent not to defend himself. Okay,
right.
He did not,
his intent was to intimidate.
To intimidate and eventually kill. Waiting for an opportunity to kill. Now, he tried to seize that opportunity right in the split second where Ahmaud Arbery was trying to defend himself for his life. So, you can't create a situation. You can't be an initial aggressor. That's everywhere. You can't be an initial aggressor and defend yourself when a person defends himself from you. So, it was, I really think the prosecution did a great job in explaining that and cross-examining Travis McMichael, who put his foot in his mouth the entire trial point where he was testifying. There was only so much coaching they could do for him, but eventually he really thought that he was going to be able to talk his way out of this one.
Yes, and he really put his foot in his mouth because he admitted, number one, that he never told Ahmaud Arbery he was under arrest. He never told him, please stop. His father even admitted, they even admitted when they told the police, and I'm quoting, I'm paraphrasing what he said, but, they said something to the effect that we wanted to know we weren't fucking around. I believe that's what the words that were used to the police when he was said. Now, the police had all of that information that incriminated them, and they never used it. And I have plenty of represented people who have said far less of nothing at all that will get him. We know people that look like us, Brian, who get arrested immediately just based off what they look like. But I want you to look at this last letter. Go to page 3. The fifth
Mhm.
point he makes. He talks about looking at the video and how Ahmaud was running along the right side of the McMichael truck, then abruptly turns 90 degrees to the left and attacks Travis McMichael, who was also standing at the front left corner of the truck. A brief skirmish ensues in which it appears Arbery strikes McMichael and appears to grab the shotgun and pull it from McMichael. The first shot is through Arbery's right hand palm, which is consistent with him grabbing and pulling the shotgun at the barrel tip. The second and third wounds are consistent with the struggle for the shotgun as depicted in the video. The angle of the second shot with the rear of the buttstock being pushed away and down from the fight are all also consistent with the upper angle of blood plume shown in the video, and that McMichael was attempting to push the gun away from Arbery while Arbery was pulling it towards himself. The third shot, too, appears to be in a struggle over the gun. The angle of the shots and the video show that this was from the beginning or almost immediately became a fight over the shotgun. You're damn right. You pointed it at him. You threatened him. Now, let me finish. Let me just finish this part. He says, given the fact that Arbery initiated the fight at the point Arbery grabbed the shotgun under Georgia law, McMichael was allowed to use deadly force to protect himself. Just as importantly, while we know that McMichael had his finger on the trigger, we do not know who caused the firings. Arbery would only had to pull the shotgun approximately 1/16 to 1/8 of 1 inch to fire the weapon himself, and in the height of an altercation,
Or he shot himself.
they're trying to say he shot himself. But then look at this caveat. They got to throw this in. We got to blame a nigga, like Paul Mooney would say. Arbery's mental health records and prior convictions help explain his apparent aggressive nature and his possible thought pattern to attack an armed man. Well, here's the only problem with that. A dead man can't speak. So how could you say or speculate as to his thoughts?
That's not the only problem, Gavin. So okay. This official code of Georgia here, he writes use of force of defense. If you read this, it says once confronted with a deadly force situation, the individual is allowed to use deadly force to defend themselves or others. And so, Barnhill is putting that there as if it only can help Travis. Now, keep in mind, they overtook him in a truck. He jumps out the truck and is waiting for him to come up, and he has a gun in his face. That gives Ahmaud the right to defend himself. Okay, right. So Travis was the threat. This particular statute gives Ahmaud the right to shoot him, and not the other way around. The person that just overtook him in a truck, which someone had mentioned, that could be a deadly aggravated assault in itself. The way they came after him, but apparently, they didn't try to hit him with the truck, but they positioned him, the truck in front of him, and jump out, waiting to alarm him or shoot him with the gun. That's the initial aggression there. That's the dangerous situation. But all of that's just erased in Barnhill's mind, and all Barnhill can see is the fact that Ahmaud, how dare him try to defend himself when someone is chasing him with a truck, jumping out with a gun, pointing at him. I mean, basically blind to all of that, except the part where Ahmaud tries to fight for his life for that brief second.
Correct. And Ahmaud Arbery had as much right to defend himself, if not more, than what Travis McMichael is claiming. And the use of force statute, there's something, as we say, the fight or flight. And it was consistent with the wounds. He was consistent with his hand was, yes, I'm going to grab the gun from you because at this point, you've blocked me in. You've not announced yourself as officers. And that was another thing I think that did him in when he talked about how he was a former law enforcement officer in training. Well, he had all of this training about continuing use of force and so forth. He should know as an officer of the law that deadly force is the last resort in anything. And you de-escalate situations. He did not tell Ahmaud Arbery he was under arrest. He didn't tell him why he was stopping him. We would like to talk. And as the prosecutor, Linda Dubinkowski, pointed out, the ADA, a brilliant cross-examination, you are aware as a former law officer, everybody has the Fifth Amendment. He doesn't have to speak to you.
Well, certainly they have they don't even have to assert a Fifth Amendment to a private citizen.
Right.
You have no obligation to talk to a private citizen about what you're doing or have done. So all of that is really, a big red herring. They try to utilize at trial.
Yes, and this is the letter he wrote that Brian wrote to Attorney General Chris Carr back in May of 2020, May 4th, when they did this protest on May 6, 2020 at 8 a.m. Brian actually walked and ran for the length of time that Ahmaud Arbery did in that town for that period of time. So real shout out to you, Brian, for that. And let me also say, Brian, do me a favor. Would you put in the chat the link to where everybody could buy your book? I know you talk about credit and debt release. I want to put that in there because I want people to support you
Sure.
while you're on here. So make sure to do that, ladies and gentlemen. I'm on with Brian Ponder, attorney at law. He came on here as a special guest, old friend of mine out from Atlanta, Georgia. He's been leading the charge with regards to this Ahmaud Arbery killing that took place. For those that are just tuning in, if you've been under a rock, we've been covering this case for ever since it started. I did a documentary video called Murder in Brunswick that's on YouTube on the death of Ahmaud Arbery. I did that back in May of 2020 when this happened. And as you know, the three defendants were found guilty today, William Roddy Bryan included, as well as Travis McMichael and his father, Gregory McMichael. Now, Travis got all nine counts that was rendered against him, including murder with malice, excuse me. Now, with murder with malice, ladies and gentlemen, that means that you are not in the state of Georgia. You are not eligible for parole at all. So that means he is set to do life in prison without the possibility of parole. My understanding, and I'm going to play a video from an Atlanta attorney who actually was talking about the case with 11 Alive. I'm going to go ahead and play that video in a second. But before I do that, I also want everyone to go to Amazon.com. Let me stop the screen for a second. This is a link to Brian's book here, ladies and gentlemen. You can go here, 4 Steps to Better Credit, learning how to lawfully improve your credit fast without breaking the bank. Brian wrote that. That is a must read. Please go to Amazon, check it out. It'll make a great stocking stuffer for Christmas. Right there, 4 Steps to Better Credit. And we got some people in the chat. Oh, no problem at all. So it's different. So to answer your question, Quat, because you were saying, I think you had stated earlier you didn't understand why so many counts of felony murder and why he was not guilty of one of them. I don't know exactly if you're talking about I guess you're talking about William Roddy Bryan. The thing with William Roddy Bryan is that the reason why he didn't get the malice murder and neither did Gregory McMichael was because they did not pull the trigger. And I know there's an issue sometimes with intent, especially with co-conspirators, or in Louisiana, we call them principals. And in Georgia or common law states, I believe you guys call them accessories before the fact. But parties, principals, is the same thing. Anybody that does anything, as what Linda Dubinkowski pointed out in her closing argument, to aid in the commission of a crime, whether they were driving the car, the getaway car, whether they were the supplies men for the weapons that they used for the bank robbery, or if they were in the bank themselves, they're just as guilty. As she pointed out in her analogy of the Super Bowl, everybody on the team, when a team wins the Super Bowl, everyone from the players to the assistant coaches get a Super Bowl ring because they aided and abetted in the accomplishment of that team being there in the first place. So that was the main issue, and there were different counts of it, and I believe the 3 different counts for murder. Brian, is that from the different shots? If I'm not,
well, the
different degrees.
felonies
I'm
that were
sorry,
committed. I think
different
I believe,
degrees, right?
I believe it's for the different felonies that were committed, if I'm correct.
I believe you are, and let me play the video of this attorney here. This is from 11 Alive. Hold on one second. This is a criminal defense attorney from Atlanta. I think he'd be better to speak on it than I
Joe
could.
Henke, who is in our other
Joe
studio
Henke.
with criminal defense attorney Daryl Cohen to weigh in on this case and also the jury's verdict. Joe?
Joining us here, former prosecutor, now defense attorney. You've been on both sides of the courtroom here. One distinction being made between the defendants already is the malice murder charge. Everyone is found guilty of murder here, but only Travis McMichael found guilty of malice murder. We're waiting to hear when sentencing will take place, but does that sort of differentiate their cases moving forward here of how they're handled now?
No, I think he was found guilty of malice murder because he pulled the trigger. He had the weapon. He had the gun. But as far as changing the time or distinguishing between when the sentences will come down, I don't think that's going to make a difference. I think the judge is going to sentence them all at or about the same time.
Sentence them all together. But does it change anything in their sentencing as far as under Georgia law, their eligibility for parole or the sentences they receive?
Major, or maybe not. With malice murder, you are not eligible for parole, period. End of discussion. So unless it's reversed on appeal, and I don't see that happening, then he is going to spend the rest of his life in prison. Whereas the other 2 defendants, where they were convicted of felony murder, they're eligible for parole in about 7 years. Will they make parole? The average person who is incarcerated, who makes parole, spends somewhere between 25 and 26 years in prison. That may not make a difference, but at least they have some shot of being released at some point in their life.
There's a lot in the build up to this case of race and the role it will play. When this actually got to a courtroom, we saw very little discussed of race in this case. Of course, there was mentioning 11 white jurors, 1 black juror. The prosecution really didn't bring race into the courtroom. But now there's federal hate crime charges. That case is still pending. Do federal prosecutors, bring this conviction into the courtroom? Do they have to present a much different case because of the hate crime charges?
Well, I think the hate crime charges federally are done as a backup in case 1 or more of these defendants were acquitted. I think that they have those hate charges crimes to prosecute later. But because it has already been adjudicated, because the 3 of them have been convicted, I wouldn't be surprised if the Fed said, you know what, we're not going to prosecute them. Because the reality is, how much more time can they get? You can't get more time than you're alive. But they may do it because they think it's appropriate, and they're trying to send a message to the rest of this country, you can't do what these 3 people did.
What, as a former prosecutor, were you surprised that they were able to get murder convictions on all 3? The state, when they presented their case, almost presented 3 cases in one. You had Travis McMichael, the gunman who pulled the trigger. You had Greg McMichael, who you could say instigated the situation from notifying Travis, hey, get your gun. This guy's running. And then you had Roddy Bryant, the guy who was in his truck. State said that was a weapon by itself, but he's on the cell phone recording video of this. You sort of have 3 distinct roles there. Are you surprised they got murder on all 3 of them? And
I'm a little surprised that they got murder on Roddy Bryant. I think that he had a viable defense for the murder charge. And had he had a different type of defense, perhaps it would have worked. But you never know. It's the old story. If you win, you're the greatest there ever was. If you lose, you're the worst. I think he could have easily been acquitted of that charge, not of the other charges.
And any other cases come to mind in Georgia here of even before this went to a courtroom, we saw it impact the state's citizens arrest law. Citizens arrest was a cornerstone or the crux of the defense's argument here. And that law was changed, overhauled in the state of Georgia before the conviction even happened, before it entered a courtroom. Have you ever seen a case like that before in Georgia?
Well, Joe, it's not a citizen's arrest if the person who was to be arrested wasn't committing a felony in the presence of these people. And even if Ahmaud Arbery had committed a crime of criminal trespass, that's not citizen's arrest. So that was arguable, but not real. And I think there's a very big difference between what you try to tell a jury and what a jury believes. And this jury cut through it. They cut through everything. They focused very carefully on what happened in the courtroom. And I think the video was extraordinarily important.
And it seems like the jury went along with that thought process. That's what the state said in their closing arguments, that these defendants did not see a crime in action. They had no evidence of it. You can't make a citizen's arrest. That the state law at that time for citizen's arrest would not allow for that. And seems like the jury followed along with that. Last question here. Does any analysis, your thoughts on the defense, the case they presented, the state, the case they presented, any problems that you had with anything that they presented? Sort of what's your analysis of it?
Well, again, because they lost, they were wrong. I think they could have changed the way they defended these people. Frankly, I would have tried to have a plea deal worked out in advance of this trial, because there were only two things that could have happened. Either A, a conviction on almost or all of the counts, or B, a not guilty. Not guilty was very unlikely, even though the narrative from the rest of this country was we're the South and it's redneck and it's racist. Well, this jury ignored everything. This jury ignored everything they should have ignored, and they focused on the evidence and the lack of evidence. And I think they focused mostly on the video, which said it all.
Perfect. Daryl, appreciate your time. As always, Daryl Cohen, former prosecutor, now defense attorney. Sheba, we'll send it back to you.
Okay, so he explained it a little bit better than I could. That was the attorney out in Georgia. Hold on a second. Let me stop the screen. So he explained it as best as I could there, Brian. He said that if it's malice murder, then there's no possibility of parole unless it's a reversed on error, which is true with the appeal. I thought the William Roddy Bryan, my personal opinion, I thought that one was going to be tough too, because he did not pull the trigger there. But like we say again, he was just as culpable because he aided in its commission, which is why they were able to bring him in for that. And I want to get your opinion on this heifer. I understand, and trust me, I know that you have to do zealous representation of your client. But for Laura Hogue to make the remarks that she did about Ahmaud Arbery's toenails, I don't know if anybody remembers that remark, but I do want your opinion on it. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can play the clip, because I want your opinion.
Was a dramatic and controversial presentation from defense lawyers that some say evoked racist images of the antebellum South. This happened in closings. First, the lead prosecutor argued that initiated the encounter with Ahmaud Arbery and were not, as they claim, acting in self-defense.
All three of these defendants made assumptions about what was going on that day, and they made their decision to attack Ahmaud Arbery in their driveways because he was a black man running down the street.
Now, lawyers for Travis McMichael, his father Greg, and William Roddy Bryan painted them as concerned neighbors worried about reports of burglaries in the area, and they blamed Arbery for his own death.
He told you about the thefts and the burglaries, the totality of the facts, why he believed what he did, that he wanted to follow him, that he wanted to talk to him, that he wanted to stop him, for the police to detain him. Don't be fooled by this word arrest. You don't have to announce you're under arrest.
Why isn't Mr. Arbery asking for help? Why isn't he calling out, hey, somebody call 911. There's crazy people after me.
But then you'd say he was reaching for a gun if he dropped his phone.
Doesn't want help.
Turning Ahmaud Arbery into a victim after the choices that he made does not reflect the reality of what brought Ahmaud Arbery to Satilla Shores. in his khaki shorts with no socks to cover his long, dirty toenails.
Joining me now, CNN legal analyst and criminal defense attorney Joey Jackson and CNN senior legal analyst and former federal prosecutor Ellie Honig. Friends, we're going to get to the long, dirty toenails issue in just a moment. First, though, Ellie, I want to address what we're going to see this morning, which is a rebuttal from the prosecution. What exactly is that? And why is it important that it's happening this morning?
So a rebuttal is the final word, is the prosecutor's chance to address and hopefully, if you're the prosecutor, correct all the things that the defense lawyers, in this case, 3 of them, just argued. Now, I think there's an interesting tactical advantage to the prosecutor to getting to go this morning. Now, when I was giving rebuttals as a prosecutor, I used to like to try to stand up immediately before the defense lawyer even hit the seat and basically say, everything that guy just said is bogus. However, there's a practical issue with the 4:30 p.m. rebuttal. You've got a jury that's been sitting there all day. They're exhausted. They've heard more information than any human being could process. And the whole time you're going, they're just going to be thinking, oh my God, I got to get to the supermarket. I got to feed my kids. It's 5:15. What's going on? Now they go home, they sleep. You get to open today as the prosecutor. You get the final word. Judge instructs them. They deliberate. The most recent thing they've heard is your rebuttal. So I think there's a nice advantage there for the prosecutors.
Joey, I want to address what we just heard from the defense there, the long, dirty toenails for Ahmaud Arbery. That was from one of the defense attorneys there. I had a chance to speak to Arbery's mother, Wanda Cooper Jones, overnight. This is what she said about the moment. It actually caused her to get up and walk out of the courtroom when that was said. Listen.
It was very, very disturbing. I thought it was very, very rude to talk about his long, dirty toenails and to totally neglect that my son had a huge hole in his chest where he was shot with that shotgun. I sat there for the last 2 weeks and let them dehumanize my son, who wasn't doing anything wrong the day that he chose to go for that afternoon job.
A deplorable and most unfortunate tactic. Listen, I get and understand the defense has a job to do, right? That's the job I do. That's the job we do as defense lawyers. The reality is though you have to thread that needle and thread that line. This was just outwardly and blatantly, in my view, racist. You want to talk about dehumanization? That's what it was about. You have to look at what she said in the context of her larger argument. Her larger argument, John, was about our neighborhood. An interloper coming in here. We had issues with our neighborhood. We had curfews. We were on edge in our neighborhood. And so if you ask me, she's speaking to that 11-1 split, right? Let's address the elephant in the room. We know from the outset that there was 11 white jurors and 1 African-American juror, notwithstanding the demographics of the area, which are 75% white, 25% black. And so I believe that she was really amping that up and trying to wrap her client up in, he is one of you, do not convict. That's not, certainly you want to have the notion of not convicting my client, but to do it in that manner, I just think transcends the bounds of decency and is not what we should be doing.
How does the prosecution deal with that in rebuttal, if at all?
I think the prosecution will deal with that in outstanding fashion. I think the prosecution all along has made the argument that this shouldn't have happened, didn't need to happen. There was no basis in it happening, but not just saying that. Grounding it in law. Why? You talk about citizens arrest law. Citizens arrest applies when you're actually seeing a crime or you have immediate knowledge of a crime.
Okay, I'm going to stop the video right there. Superstar Bella asks, where did she get her law degree at Walmart on rollback? Well, look, some of the
she has LLM and white privilege argument.
White privilege argument. Yeah, Brian, what did you think of that when you heard it?
Yeah, I think, let me see, who said it? Someone, I think it's Hotman. Desperation, that's exactly what it was. The comment was despicable. The attorney, or the 2 gentlemen just speaking just a moment ago, really put it perfectly in that she was trying to get that jury to relate, look, this black guy coming in here, these defendants are one of you, you know how it goes. No one was buying it. No one is buying it. The jury did their job. I really expected nothing less of that jury. What I really want to say is all of those defense attorneys did a great job at getting their clients convicted, in my opinion. this last comment that we saw about the toenails is a perfect example. It's disgusting, and I think that this is, you know, this jury is a group of people that, you know, think for themselves. It's a reasonable jury, and they felt the same. If you're going this low to try to defend your client, talking about dirt underneath the person's toenails who's been shot down, then you really don't have a case. You're really that desperate to where you insult a dead man's toenails as if that's criminal. All dirty people are
Right.
criminal people, specifically black people, you know, because, you know, a racist event, a racist comment, you know, does it rub off? You know, it's like that blackness is dirty.
That's exactly the way I took it. Was basically she was talking about how blackness, referring to his blackness more than anything. When you're talking about dirty toenails, but my understanding, I saw on court TV, they asked her exactly about that comment, and her response was that it was relating to a comment or the testimony of the coroner, Dr. Donahue, that was not allowed in court, where she said it concerned his mental health aspect, which they couldn't get into the hearing, and saying that
People
that
with
was a sign of something.
dirty nails of mental health issues.
Something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing, and I may be saying it incorrectly, but it was something along those lines that I had heard, which I thought was complete, utter bullshit, because I've never heard of anything like that in my years of as a practicing lawyer. It reeked of desperation, as to what the brother was just saying earlier. It reeked of desperation. Quatman said.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you noticed that, Brian. And speaking of attorneys who reek of desperation, I'm going to do one last video. I want to do is show everybody what Kevin Goff had to say about his client being convicted. I want y'all to watch this.
Fair trial. We may disagree as to whether we were successful
Now listen what
in doing that
happens.
fair trial, but we certainly appreciate the efforts that were made. And you've seen the efforts.
And I got
made
one
in
last
this
video to
crime
show after this.
contain the carnival-like atmosphere outside the courthouse. And, that's pretty rough. You got you guys doing your job, and other people are doing their jobs. And, you know, this is America. It ain't easy.
Because of the carnival outside.
Freedom, you got to work at it. And,
Carnival outside.
You
know this
I
guy?
appreciate the efforts that everyone
No,
made.
I'm glad I don't.
You know, bottom line
Good.
is Mr. Ryan, you know, is sitting in a jail cell instead of being home with his family, and I can't pretend that I'm happy about it.
Do you plan on appealing?
We will file a motion for new trial on behalf of Mr. Ryan next week.
Pause there for a second.
That'll be denied like all the other bogus motions he filed, Gavin.
Yes, he's filed about 8 mistrial. He made about 8 mistrial motions in this case. But what was offensive, what I was listening to, he talked about how Mr. Bryan will be home, won't be with his family on tomorrow for Thanksgiving. Ahmaud Arbery will never see another Thanksgiving, Christmas.
They don't care. He
Easter,
doesn't care.
Nothing. Of course, he doesn't care.
He does not care. He could care less about that. That death.
What happens from there?
Yesterday, I was asking you details about the case. You said you couldn't discuss it at the time.
Well,
let me ask you this: Do you think that self-defense or a citizen's arrest are really applicable and justifiable in this case?
Well, you can't blame the jury for their decision in this case because they're obligated to follow the law that they are provided by the court. So, you know, there were a lot of legal issues that were raised outside the presence of the
So you
jury.
didn't answer that question.
The law was in this case. There were a lot of arguments outside the presence of the jury as to what the evidence was supposed to be in this case. And the jury considered the evidence that they were allowed to hear, and they considered the law that was provided to them. And we respect the hard work they put into this case.
But do you think your client was conducting a citizen's arrest?
I'm not going to answer that question.
Because he can't even form his mouth to make that life.
Right.
Last question for you. Sorry.
Knows they fucked up.
Racial overtones. There was a lot of conversation about racist comments being made during the trial. Do you believe that to be true?
I didn't hear that evidence come in during the trial.
I'm referring.
I don't recall that. I mean, I'm not going to comment on evidence that was
I'm
excluded.
referring
It
to
doesn't
comments
note
about
that
the.
evidence
I'm
was.
referring to comments about long legs and dirty toenails, and also your comments about black pastors not being allowed in beyond this point because it could influence the jury.
Well, I'm not going to comment on the arguments that other people have made. These lawyers, all the lawyers, the Cobb County lawyers, did a fantastic job representing the state of Georgia, representing the family, and they deserve a lot of credit.
He said somebody, y'all didn't hear that? He said somebody
We heard
disbarred
it.
this motherfucker.
Just because
We heard it.
You heard
appreciate
it?
Send him lunch.
For my big job representing
Rwanda.
I'm going to comment on the arguments that other people have made. These lawyers, all the lawyers, the Cobb County lawyers, did a fantastic job representing the state of Georgia, representing the family, and they deserve a lot of credit. They did a marvelous job, and just because I didn't appreciate it,
I can't listen to much more of this golf guy.
attorney,
This guy
and I don't
just makes me
respect
sick.
it. They did great legal work, and they deserve.
All right.
What I was saying is I turned golf off, but I did want to show everybody another video that was someone pointed out to me that I didn't care for. But Marcus Arbery, who is Ahmaud Arbery's father, of course, had Ben Crump and was surrounded by Ben Crump and Al Sharpton outside the courtroom. And someone tweeted this, and I retweeted it. This is what I have here. Hold on.
All life matters. Yes. Not just black children. We don't want to see nobody go through this. Amen. I don't want to see no daddy watch their kid get left and shot down like that. So it's all our problem. It's all our problem. So hey, let's keep fighting. Let's keep doing it and making this place a better place for all human beings. Amen. All human beings. Amen. Everybody. Amen. Love everybody. Love everybody. Human beings need to be treated equally. Yeah. We finna conquer this lynching. Today is a good day. Amen. Oh no. Before the lawyers come back, let me also
So he
say
said all lives matter.
all life matters. Yes. Not just black children.
So he was saying all lives matter after the suit, and a lot of people, I had retweeted it. And the reason why I'm like that, especially, and I'm cautious, of course, I defend this brother, Ahmaud Arbery. He did not deserve to be killed like that at all. And no person, and whether they're black or white, deserves to be killed in that manner. But we know that it happens too often to black Americans because we were devalued and we were dehuman. We've never been considered human in this country in the first place. But when you make comments like all lives matter and so forth, and the problem that I think a lot of people have too is that it takes away from what we're saying. And I'm not a fan of the necessarily BLM because of what they represent and the groups that are behind that. But we got to be on code with these things, because this would happen with Botham Jean and his family after the trial, when that judge gets off the bench handing a Bible to a convicted murderer. And then on top of that, the son is hugging her. The other brother is hugging her and embracing her. And look, I'm not saying you can't forgive, because I would be a hypocrite and say that I wouldn't want someone to forgive me if I've wronged them. But doing it at that time with the cameras around you, and yet alone a judge coming off the bench. Brian, you even wrote a letter to the bar out in Texas.
Oh, that upset me so much. I don't even want to pull that letter up, but yeah, I wrote a letter in that particular instance. I was so sickened by the fact that you breaking decorum with hug and Bible gifting. You know, look, you can mail that Bible to the jails, you know, and let them distribute them. But Yeah, I did write a letter on that. And I've never done that. I never complained about a judge until I saw that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Ahmaud's father, you know, I get he's from a different generation, and I'm trying to
Mhm.
be understanding. But when we hear all this all lives matter crap, look, the older generation, we got to be real. The older
That was
generation
his father.
That was his dad. Yes.
Okay.
That was Mr. Yeah. That was Mr. Arbery. We got to understand, guys, the game is chess, not checkers. And in a situation like that, where he's saying, you know, and I get that he was emotional, obviously, because he was happy about the verdict, but we haven't gotten to the sentencing yet.
Yeah. Well, you know, I would steer clear of any criticism of that family, and I would sort of just wait on that. But certainly, I don't think all lives matter in that neighborhood. You know, when the kids or people that were a different color were playing around in that house, nobody chased them down and shot them. So, you know, I just don't. You know, I can't appreciate that statement or agree with it, but you know, I just really you know, feel bad for that entire family and community. But I certainly don't believe, you know, yeah. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people don't agree with that, because when you say that, that's not what's really happening out there. That's not what happened to his son. You know, I don't think that's what's really going on. And,
well, the thing is,
I'm not really trying to criticize.
Well, the thing, you know, Brian, though, today you got to remember, especially in our generation, when we see other, especially older Black people react with this "we shall overcome" and "kumbaya, my lord" mentality, we're not waiting anymore from someone from the sky to save us. We're doing it for ourselves. That's not to say I don't believe in God, but I believe God helps those who helps themselves. We faith without works is dead, and I think that typically what I have seen in recent history with these police shootings is that somebody comes along and gets shot in a tragedy. The person typically who does it, the officer who does it, doesn't go to jail. But we see but before there's a civil settlement, there are a group of individuals from out of state who come in. I won't name their names. These lawyers that come in, these leaders, you know, and I'll just say one, I'm not a fan of Al Sharpton at all, because he's bought and paid for. I'm going on that saying that, because I've heard stuff about him and issues that I've had from my opinion. This is my opinion on it. But we see this happen. They always come and do the same script and storyline. And we don't get, I guess, what we call true justice. And somehow someone from the family, I'm not naming individuals in particular, but it seems like they give them a script to tell them all the time, you know, don't call to be peaceful. Don't say you don't forgive this person, say you love them and all of this stuff. We don't see that. And it's the same thing. And I think we're frustrated. Younger people are frustrated at seeing this stuff over and over again. I don't want to criticize someone that lost their child and is mourning in the way that they are. But if we're talking about a movement that we're facing and fighting as a group, we all have to be on one accord. And, you know, I don't think, you know, I've seen death penalty cases, Brian, where a white family who's lost their loved one, and let's say that perpetrator is Black, they'll say they forgive them, but are they going to stop the death penalty? Will they write a letter to the governor saying to give him a pardon? No, they're sitting right there in the gas chamber, right outside the gas chamber, waiting to watch, right outside the electric chair. So it's like are we too forgiving with this stuff? And you know, I see why a lot of people are frustrated, and I'll just leave it at that.
Absolutely.
If you
Absolutely.
want to respond, yeah.
No, I can understand that. I know what you're saying.
Yeah, but I waiting to see what the sentence is, because I believe the attorney who spoke with 11 Alive said they could get 7 years for parole. At least McMichael and the older McMichael and Roddy Bryan. But, you know, for something like this, for taking someone's life.
Yeah.
And this is why I'm going to make another point, Brian, to this. This is why brothers got to stay strapped. Brothers and sisters. You know, Judge Joe Brown was even talking and said even when he goes and exercises or jogs, he would carry his piece. They have waistbands you can use to carry and strap on. But I also think this too, that could have been used against him as well, because if he had a firearm, then they would say, oh, wait, well, he had a firearm. So legally he could have shot this man. You know, he could be a threat. He wasn't supposed to have that. So it would have gone south either way for Mr. Arbery, but you know, maybe Ahmaud could have taken one or two of them if he were strapped. You know, we'll never know, sadly, but I'm encouraging African Americans to join Black gun owners clubs like the Black Gun Owners Association or NAGA. I know it doesn't sound right when you say it at first, but NAGA, which is the National Association of African American the National African American Gun Owners Association. There's some other independent ones here in New Orleans. We have 2A Coffee, which is another one. I'm with BGOA as well. But yeah, you got to learn firearms and get a concealed weapon permit. Stay strapped.
That's very, very important, Gavin. Very important. Very important.
Yeah.
Practice. Someone is saying practice. Yeah, you can't just buy a gun. You have to practice for these situations. You're your own police. Okay. The police can't get police. Police don't protect you unless you walk around with one. So man, you're your own police. You need to have protection in your home, on your person, out and about. And the thing is, in certain, most states, you have to have a permit to carry a pistol on yourself when you're out. So yeah, it's very important to get that so you can assert your Second Amendment right outside the home and car. Of course, when you're home in your car, have protection. But again, we don't know if the Second Amendment or having a weapon would have protected Ahmaud that day. But you have to be vigilant and know that these other people, they are armed and dangerous, as you see. And they think that you have a privilege to stop you and question you or kill you if you don't. So, you have to stay strapped and really be careful out there.
Most definitely. And I mean, I see you, Brian, all the time with your, I see you with pictures like you John Wick at the range with the AR and stuff like that. And like I
lost all those in a boat accident. I used to have them.
Well, you know what you want for Christmas now. You know what Santa Claus can get you for Christmas now.
Right. So, Gavin, this really, today's verdict, I wasn't expecting today. I sort of, saw it come out and was looking, but I did expect, I wasn't shocked or, people had doubts after this whole Rittenhouse stuff, but I really had no doubt that they would get this right. And so I didn't even think about the alternative. I did know that if they didn't get it right, it would just been horrible. But I really didn't put any energy into what if they don't get it right, because I was really confident with the prosecution. And again, the defense attorneys did a great job getting their client convicted. So, it was really a day of relief to see justice, taking place swiftly, with the jury coming right back with this decision. But it truly was expected, and not really celebratory about it. Didn't go out and do, or anything like that. Didn't speak on it until tonight with you, because it's really sad. We don't want these verdicts. We don't want these settlements. We want to be alive. So I just really hate seeing all these big settlements and all this stuff other than people just getting the chance to live a full life. as
Right.
a black man or a person, woman, whoever. You know, you want to live. We don't want these settlements. Okay. And so, and especially with a citizen thinking they have the right to execute a person like this, or to be a police, you know, think they're a police officer, you know, it's just
Right.
unacceptable. So
And he
hopefully this sends a signal.
and he fired 3 times. If he had fired once, that's one thing. He actually could have gotten Ahmaud Arbery would have been alive since it hit his hand, and he could have kept it pointed at him and told him to stop or freeze. But he kept firing, and that obviously showed intent to kill.
That's where that
But
malice comes in.
right, that's where the malice came in. The first shot you could say was an accident. I give you that one. But after that, you shoot 2-3 times, and you had to keep. I don't know what type of shotgun it was. It was a 12 gauge. I believe it was a 12 gauge Remington
It
870.
definitely, I think it was a 12 gauge.
You,
I think, I don't know what kind of shot he had, but I'm assuming maybe a buckshot. I don't know if it was bird shot. I don't know what he had.
well, whatever you pointed at is going to do damage, and
A lot.
in this case, it killed. Yes, and he fired. And he fired 3 times, and that's the thing. It was a Remington 870 12 gauge. So that's my father has one. That's a bad boy, and you got to pump it. I don't know if it was a kind you pump each shot, or I think if you pumped it once, it goes. It might be one where you don't have to continue pumping. I believe it's a pump action.
Yeah, those
I
guns
believe
are
it is
very
pump
powerful.
action.
I mean, shotgun. I go skeet shooting with those guns. Let me see. I think it was a pump, but nevertheless, those are powerful guns. Powerful guns.
Right.
You expect to blow someone's parts of your body off with such a powerful gun. So that's really designed for hunting. That's not a self-defense gun.
Yeah. That was for hunting, and that's what they did. So you know what?
Yeah, that was the point.
Bring your shotguns, brothers. Bring your shotguns. Arm yourself with AR-15s. Go to a concealed weapons class if you can. Get your gun rights up. Step your Second Amendment rights up. That's what I have to say. I always say that. Brian, I won't keep you long any further, my brother. I wanted to let you first off wish you a blessed, happy Thanksgiving. Do you have any plans for tomorrow in
Thank you.
particular?
Same to you. Same to you. Yeah, I have some plans, and hope to. Yeah, I have some plans.
You won't elaborate further. It's plans
I don't
for
elaborate.
someone.
I don't elaborate my moves, openly.
Well, I mean, do you have, are you having a party or anything? Or
Nah, no party. But yeah, I'll just be laying low, on the holiday. But yeah, I definitely hope you enjoyed as well. Thank you for telling people about my book. This book, is really a staple item for everyone, because we all have credit and need to improve it, whether you have good credit or bad credit, to tell you what you need to do.
Yeah. Well, we are about looking out for each other, and I look out for my brother here. He's looked out for me, and I want everyone. A lot of people have asked about this too. When is the book for my book, Bill Cosby, The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania versus William H. Cosby, The Destruction of Due Process in the United States? When that's going to come out? Well, what has happened is that I have, of course, it is due out on Amazon soon. We're trying to push. I've been trying to get it released for the fall, but be honest with you, it has been in holding due to my legal department looking over it. They have not given me, not that the book wouldn't be released, but I wait to hear back from them so that I can know if there's any issues that come about. So that's primarily what is causing the delays, but I will let everybody know when it is available. I'll probably shoot another trailer and spot for it if it gets pushed back. But as you know, Brian, especially around the holidays, and it's when people try to get their deadlines met, because now we only got one more month practically in the year of 2021. But I want everybody to go to this Facebook page, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania versus William H. Cosby Jr. I believe, Brian, the last I saw, you actually did like this page, I believe.
Yep.
This is a must-have book, ladies and gentlemen. So go to this page so that way when we have updates about the book, when it's going to be released, when it will be ready for pre-order, I will have that ready for you immediately. So that's the best way to find out about it. Again, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania versus William H. Cosby Jr. If you look at the Facebook uh, username I have here at Commonwealth Cause, it is easy for you all to pull up that page and like it. So the book is a must read. And, you know, Brian, of course, he was paying attention even to the Cosby case as well, like so many others. And I think, you know, he got railroaded in that case. But I'm sorry?
Absolutely. I mean, thank
Yeah.
goodness for his last legal team.
Yes, Jennifer Bojan, who's also representing R. Kelly. She's a phenomenal lawyer. Kudos to her, because we can't have lynch mobs. We can't have them outside the courtroom, and we can't have them inside the courtroom even more so. So that's what happened here. But yeah, please go to this page, ladies and gentlemen, for any update, for more updates about the book with a release date. I will be on WBOK 12:30 a.m. on Tuesday in New Orleans, promoting the book, talking about it with Sally Ann Roberts with the morning talk show. So y'all want to tune in at 8 o'clock Central Standard Time, please go there. I think we'll even have a Facebook page for you up there. I'll find out more details. Also, ladies and gentlemen, as pointed out earlier, if you'd like to advertise with the channel, you can advertise with me at gavin.grich1@gmail.com. Hit me up for rates. You can also go to the Patreon if you want premium content. Also, ladies and gentlemen, I'll ask if you could donate to the channel. Hit that Cash App, Gavin Richard Esquire, Google Pay, and PayPal. Those are the links, as well as the Zelle comments there. I have some seasoning as well. Brian, hopefully you can buy some seasoning that you can have if you want for the Christmas holiday. I know Thanksgiving is tomorrow, but Nawny'sCreoleBlend.com is the website to our seasoning company. And you can try it on chicken, meat, or fish. Nawny's goes great with every dish. And chicken isn't the only bird it goes great with. It goes great on turkey and even on salads. So I ask people, please check that out. Support the family. We're trying to get this product in stores very soon. It should be coming up shortly. But Nawny'sCreoleBlends.com, Nawny'sCreoleBlends.com. That's the website, and you can shop right there if you're interested in buying some. So it would mean a lot. Lastly, but not least, ladies and gentlemen, also you can go to Patreon and get premium content. You can also check out our music that we have, songs such as Video Soul, and our theme song, Gotta Get On Up. I'm not going to play Gotta Get On Up tonight just because of the seriousness of tonight, but this was a special edition of Random Topic Tuesdays. This is Gavin Richard Presents, ladies and gentlemen, concerning the news of Ahmaud Arbery. Again, breaking news. All three individuals, William Roddy Bryan, Travis, and Gregory McMichael, the father and son, were found guilty of felony murder today in the death of Ahmaud Arbery. I'm Gavin Richard with Gavin Richard Presents, and I want to thank my guest, Brian Ponder, again, by his book, 4 Steps to Better Credit. I will see you all in the next one. And tomorrow we will have a rebroadcast of the show since it's Thanksgiving. Ladies and gentlemen, have a blessed Thanksgiving. Be safe with your family. Eat plenty of turkey and make sure you stay strapped. I'm out. I'll holla. Peace. I'm going to enjoy the rest of Houston and continue doing some work, guys. Okay? Y'all have a good night. God bless. Thank you, Bossa Queenie. Thank you to all in the chat. Derek Bailey, my brother, Black Voltron Darius. Wonder where our some few people I haven't seen in a while, like Rosalind and DJ B-Side. I haven't seen them in a while. Thank you, Amara. Where's Black Mama? I haven't seen her in a while. I gotta talk with her. Okay. Well, guys, I'm about to get out of here. Let me wrap it up. But Bossa Queenie, One Who Cares, Vulcan, Darius, my brother, everybody that's been here, Tupac, Biggie. If I did not name individuals, Blueberry 40, Tyree, Superstar Bella, if it's too many of y'all to name, and Night Ride. And if I missed you, it's my head, not my heart, ladies and gentlemen. I'm out. Good night.